بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Now I'm going to open it up for questions. So, hit me with everything you got. Don't hold back. No political correctness. Go ahead. Oh, come on. You have no questions, man. I'm sure you were listening to something on TV or watching something and you thought, man, Muslims, they're like this or that. Something, any question you have, this is your opportunity. I'm here for you. So, ask away. I'm going to give preference to non-Muslims first. If you're Muslims, please hold your hands. You can ask me later. Go ahead.
What can we do as non-Muslims to help dispel these false rumors that we're talking about?
Man, did I pay you for that? I'm kidding. That's an excellent question. What can we as non-Muslims do to dispel these notions? The first thing which you're doing, come and talk. Open up those lines of communication. Secondly, and this is very important, because if you think about Germany and what happened during the horrible incident of the World War II Holocaust, what happened is that a huge country sat by and watched a population get demonized and killed, and they all thought, well, it's not my problem. And then it became their problem, because it's not going to be one ethnicity that's going to be demonized. So as non-Muslims, it's very important that you take an active role in stopping Islamophobia. When you see your politicians talk about, Muslims need to be blocked and sent home or whatever, you need to say, well, why? My Muslim neighbor who hasn't done anything wrong, he hasn't broken any laws, why would he be penalized for his ethnicity? Because if we don't, then the same thing's going to happen here that happened here during the Japanese internment camps during World War II. The same kind of xenophobic ideas, they used to lynch Italians and used to blame Mexicans, which is still going on. And the same kind of things that happened in Germany during Hitler's time, those kind of things will happen again. History repeats itself, except the ethnicity will change. Today it's Muslims, tomorrow it may be Mormons, then it may be Jews, it may be somebody else. So we all, as humans, as people who believe in righteousness, should come together and stand up against this kind of xenophobic attitude. If you hear somebody make a racist joke about a Muslim, tell them it's not okay. It's equally not okay to make a 7-Eleven joke as it is not to make about an African American or a Jewish American, all of that. And when you see people in your circle talk about, well, Muslims are like that or Muslims are like that, you should ask, have you ever spoken to a Muslim? Did you ever go to a mosque? Did you ever sit with anybody? And these kinds of little steps will go a long way. Other than that, get some of your friends, come to the mosque, have some food, enjoy, ask questions, open up dialogue, and I think we can work together to build bridges and a better tomorrow. Next. That's going to be a hard question to follow up with.
Two questions. First,
you get one free, and the second one I got to cut. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, two questions.
The first one is that there are constant conflicts in the Middle Eastern area, specifically between the different Muslim tribes. Why does that happen?
Good question. So, let's take a two-part answer to that. First thing, if you go back historically between the Catholic and the Protestant factions within Christianity, have there been a lot of friction, fighting, massacres, accusations of being apostates, genocide? Yes, you can go look up your history books, right? So that tells you this is not something about factions. It has to do with politics. And in the Middle East, if you look at Iraq, or if you look at Syria, or if you look at many of these countries, until those governments were destabilized, did you have those conflicts? No. But when you walk into a country, and you take out, for example, just as a wild example, let's say some country has a lot of oil, and you decide that you're going to invade that country, because they have weapons of mass destruction that you never find, right? You walk into a country, what do you do first? Take out the police, take out the military. What do you guard? The oil fields? You don't guard the ammo dumps, right? So what happens? Chaos. People start to cling up into little cults, little groups to defend their territory, to defend sources. It's not about a religious faction, because all those people in Syria were living together fine until you had bombings and killings. And then what happens? People, in human nature, they start to group up. Think of it this way. Like tomorrow, if China decides that Trump is a horrible president, and like Saddam Hussein, he's not fit to govern, and they attack the US, and they take out the military, and they take out the police, and you call 911, and there's just beep, beat, right? Not just the whole time, but just a beat. And there's no police. And your stores, your grocery stores are running out of water. What are you going to do? You're going to take your friends, and you're going to get your, well, this is UCSD, you may not get a gun, but you might get like a, you know, a book from your library or something. Then you're going to rush down there, and you're going to start to try to defend whatever resources you have. And how are you going to differentiate yourself from the next neighborhood? Might be by religious faction, it might be by tribe, it might be by language, it may be Mexicans against blacks, it may be North San Diego against South, it might be state against UCSD, but you're going to use something. And that's what you see in the Middle East. It's about resources. It's not about a religious conflict. Otherwise, you would have had it before. You would have continued to have it. When does it happen? When the places are destabilized.
But back then, wasn't there constant conflicts between the Shiite and the Sunnis?
So historically, if you look at the original problems, they began in around 1400 years ago or 1350 years ago. From then on, these problems haven't happened until recently. Until Iran and their pushing for conflict and oil and control the Middle East, you didn't have this. If you look at it, think of it this way, right? Saddam was what faction? It was Sunni, right? And the Kurds are what? Sunni. They're both Sunni. But there was fighting because it was political. It had to do with the fact that the US said to the Kurds, stand up against Saddam, we'll support you. When they stood up, nobody came, and they got slaughtered. It wasn't because they were Sunni, because Saddam was Sunni himself. Saddam's foreign minister, his name was Tariq Aziz, he was Christian. So this had nothing to do with religion or factions. It had to do with power. But when Saddam got taken out of power, and the US invaded Iraq, even though Iraq had nothing to do with Osama bin Laden, or 9/11, or weapons of mass destruction, there was no reason for us to go there. He was a bad president, sure, he was a horrible person. But how many bad presidents are in the world? North Korea is not really a good guy, right? I mean, China you could say you don't like China, or Sudan, or Putin. I don't like Putin. Should we invade Russia? No. Somebody may not like Obama, somebody may not like Bush, somebody may not like Trump. Should they invade the US? No. When you invade a country, and you take out the military, you take out the police, those people that were living as neighbors, as friends, whatever faction they may be, now to survive, for food, for water, for dominance, they're going to fight each other. So this is more political than religious.
Then with the recent conflicts in Western Europe due to the refugee influxes, there has been talk of people trying to implement Sharia law. Would that also be political then?
I didn't understand. So what does the refugee crisis have to do with Sharia law?
They say that after the refugees are in Europe,
right,
the communities there, and they are trying to implement Sharia law
okay, so
with the local government.
So this is purely fiction. This might as well be on Looney Tunes, late night, Adult Swim, because there is no fact to that at all. Refugees that are coming from Syria aren't trying to implement any kind of law. They're just trying to survive. They're trying to eat and sleep. There is no single incident that you can point to in any European country where a Syrian refugee came to Europe and tried in any way to implement Sharia law. Those refugees are just trying to survive and get away from a place where they're being bombed, chemically attacked, massacred, because we decided to light a fire and then just walk away and say, we're not going to really fix it, we're just going to bomb from the sky. What the hell kind of solution is that? The Syrian refugees, think of it like this. Let's say, what neighborhood do you live in? Don't tell me your house, it's okay, but neighborhood. La Jolla, right?
Yeah.
Sure, rich kid. So now what happens is that, let's say you're living in La Jolla and there's some conflict between your billionaires and your millionaires, and they start bombing you. And bombs are falling on your house. And your brother is killed with a bomb. You're just walking to the store and he gets killed. And the food stores are empty. There's no food. What are you going to do? Are you trying to implement your law on you? No, you're just trying to get out of there and eat somewhere. So these kinds of xenophobic ideas aren't in reality. Now, what is Sharia law and how is it implemented and what does it have to do? That's a different issue. But the issue of the Syrian refugees has nothing to do with them trying to bring any kind of political change in Europe. They're just trying to survive. And if we hadn't invaded Iraq and bombed Syria, they were perfectly fine where they were. Yes?
I also have two things. So one thing is more of a comment. You were saying how it's more about politics than religion. But a lot of the times it's really hard to separate both. Like for example, I grew up in Lebanon, and there it's pretty much the same thing. Like a person is born with their religion on their ID. The president has to be a specific religion.
Right.
Like all the ministers have to be a specific religion. So you can't really separate politics from a religion and say, oh, these two groups are fighting, but it's about politics, it's not about religion.
Sure.
So how can you separate that
Sure.
in a country
So,
like Lebanon?
So, in Lebanon, there was a time you had a civil war, right?
A lot of civil wars, yes.
Okay. One major one where you really kind of went at it, right? Before that time, did you not have those religious groups?
We always did.
You always did?
have problems between them.
Right, but you did live in peace for a long time. And then there were times where you had conflicts, right? Okay, so let's take it a different level. In Lebanon, you have Sunnis, you have Shia, you have Christians, right? You have Druze and all that too, but let's take the major groups. In the United States, we have those groups as well. In, let's say, Turkey, you have those groups as well. In China, you have those groups. If it's based on religion only, then why is it that those countries don't have war going on between them? But in Lebanon, you have also a political problem. You have a very weak government, which keeps on taking presidents out, and Hariri gets killed, and cabinet gets taken by Hezbollah. So that has to do with politics. Hezbollah is a political group. Not even every Shia supports Hezbollah, right? You're from Lebanon. Are you up on the politics, or you just?
Yeah,
Yes. So Hezbollah is a political group. They have political goals.
Yeah.
Hezbollah is fighting in Syria right now. If it had to do with religion and only having to do with their, what are they doing in Syria? What are they doing in other places? Hezbollah and Hamas and other groups, they're from different sects. Hamas is Sunni, Hezbollah is Shia. But in many political things, they work together. So in the end, it is politics. But the name of religion is used. And the fact of that, how it's proven, is the fact that other people in other societies, in other countries, where there's a stronger form of government, where there are institutions that work, those groups aren't fighting each other. Everybody's living peacefully. But when you have a meltdown of a system, then people use those groups. In Lebanon, you had Kurds that came over, that had their own conflicts. Even though they were Sunni, they had fights with other Sunnis. In Iraq, right now, you look at the Arab Sunnis and the Kurd Sunnis, they're fighting. Different Shia militias are fighting each other. Muqtada Sadr just attacked their parliament with stuff, and they're all Shia. So this isn't about doctrine or faith. This has to do with political causes by groups like Hezbollah, groups like Hamas, groups like Muqtada Sadr's little personal army, the PKK, who are politically motivated.
But didn't the split between Shia and Sunni start politically?
True.
When Ali wanted, when the
Sure.
Shias are with Ali and then the Sunnis.
So there was no Sunni at that time in that sense. There was the Jama'ah,
Yeah.
and then there was a split. Shia means sect. It's a split. So there was the Muslim Ummah, and then there was a split. But Ali, for example, he never cursed Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, or those kind of problems didn't happen. What you see in Iran today, and what you see in Iraq today, and many of the places, these are political things that have been fueled over time. These aren't original problems that happened before. And that's why in many countries, Sunni and Shia and the people live next to each other without any problems. They have no doctrinal problems. But once you bring politics into it, once you take the government out of it, once you make resources less readily available, those fights begin. Even between different Christian sects. I mean, if you look at it from a perspective of history, if you look at Europe, how many battles were there between Protestants and Catholics, and how many massacres and killings and wars happened because of that? Even look at the Ireland situation with the IRA, who were Catholic, Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, who were Protestants. I used to live in England. They blew up malls, even when I lived there. But now everybody lives peacefully. Why? Because of political situation, right? It's not an issue between Catholics and Protestants. It's an issue when there is resources or lack of a government ability to control a country. Otherwise, here, how come we aren't trying to hack away at each other here? Right? Because we live in a society where everybody is able to practice their religion. But if you live in a society where people are breaking into your house and stealing your food, you're going to try to find some way to defend yourself. Whether it's through your ethnicity or your religious sect or whatever else maybe. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to, you totally covered it. I just wanted to completely agree with you because I'm also Lebanese, and I was in Lebanon last summer, and I've been to every city in the country. I followed every religious faction, and it's 100% political. Yeah, I definitely agree with you.
Cool.
I had another question.
It's okay, go for it. We got all.
What Muslims think of Druze and their origins?
Sure. So if you look at the Druze faith, without getting into too much detail and boring everybody else, it goes back to Al-Hakim, who they felt was a reincarnation of God, and they had a Durzi who was supposedly a prophet, and Hakim actually had him killed for his heretical beliefs. So in essence, Muslims don't agree with Druze faith. They have mutated away from the original message into believing in reincarnation, the 5 principles, and not having any practice till past 40. And that's why the major Muslim body of the Ummah has only one belief. Muslims are really one Ummah. There are sects that have broken away, whatever they want to name themselves, but we as Muslims should all come together as one. We have the Quran still with us. You know, if there was reincarnation of the Prophet and reincarnation of God, it would be in the Quran. And we don't have it. So we still have the writings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, still with us, the Hadith. We can go look up Sahih from Da'if, from Mawdu'. So in essence, the Muslim body is one. Durs and Bataniya and all these sects kind of split away, and they have their own beliefs, but they're outside the Muslim Ummah. Yes?
So I have a question. Where would the ISIS stem from? Like in relation to your, because I know that like doing my own research and stuff, I know that they target like people who practice Islam the most out of all. So I know that's like one of the misconceptions, but I just was like unsure of how they originated.
To be honest with you, I don't know. Because none of us know. We don't really know where ISIS came from, how they get their money, how do they operate. To be honest with you, there's more questions there than there are answers. Because as somebody who lives in the US and only has access to the same news media that you do, I've never been to Syria, never been to Syria, just making sure everyone knows that.
I have.
You may have, but I haven't. You're Syrian, it's okay for you.
Go from there.
So, if we look at it from what we see here, right? There was a country called Syria, and there was a country called Iraq, and there was no ISIS, there was no Daesh, there was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq. It was functioning in whatever way. It may not be great, but it was a functioning country. Iraq did have the highest education rate. You know, Syria was very well educated. People used to go there to study. And then you had an invasion of Iraq. And that's where Al-Qaeda in Iraq began. Pre-Saddam, there was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq, right? And then from there you had a bombing campaign, where a destabilization of Syria, and then you had the destabilization of Syria. And these groups emerged. And the interesting thing is that these groups aren't like 10 guys in an apartment somewhere. They have like Humvees, and they have like all these things. Where are Humvees made? Yeah? China? No? America? Oh, that's interesting. They also have M16s. Where are M16s made? Oh, that's crazy. They control a whole segment of Syria, and how do they fund it? They sell oil, right? Right? Okay. So have you ever pulled up to like a gas pump and it was like ISIS gas, and you kind of pump your gas from it? Right? Any of you? No. So who buys that oil? And who refines that oil? And who? I mean, you know, oil is not like refined in a garage somewhere. You have to have a refinery. You have to have factories. So, to be honest with you, it's all shady, you know. And what's the reality? I don't know. But I can tell you this. We as a country are strong enough and powerful enough and have enough technology that if we wanted to finish off a segment of Syria, we could. Why don't we? I don't know, right? So, yes.
Just now you pointed out that Al-Qaeda wasn't formed in Iraq.
There was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq pre-Saddam's war. There was Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan and other places, but not in Iraq.
I'll just clarify.
Yeah. Google it. You can look it up. All right, come on. What are the more other questions? We're still here.
Couldn't even grow beards.
Yeah.
Iraq.
Iraq was a very secular country in the time of Saddam. It was also highly educated. Iraq's foreign minister was Christian. The ministry was pretty mixed. It wasn't a great place to live. Don't get me wrong. I'm not supporting Saddam. But What I am saying is, what was the reason for us to invade? Just because he was a bad guy? Well, there's a lot of bad guys in the world. Just because they don't have oil, we don't invade them. So, and then if you do invade, you have to kind of leave things the way you found them. Otherwise, like we come here, if we break all the windows and stuff before leaving, your school's going to be like, hey, you got to go fix that stuff because you should leave it the way you left it, when you found it. Well, you can't go into a country, take out the army, take out the infrastructure, bomb that crap out of it, carpet bombing. Oh yeah, that's a great idea. And then be like, what's wrong with you guys? Why are you guys killing each other? Well, because they're trying to get that one piece of bread. So, anyway, I digress. More questions? Come on, you must have something. Like, should I ask? Go ahead and ask. Yes?
But you don't think there was a problem in Syria before any invasion?
Sure there were. Okay, so let's put it this way. Do you think we have racial tension in the US? Do you think we have problems between different communities?
Yes.
Right? But things are still controlled, right? We're not out in the street banging at each other, right? But now if China invaded here and took out the police force, took out the military, took out the SWAT team, took out everything that keeps order, then we would have those tensions blow up as well. We would have race wars, we would have, communities against each other. Don't think we're above all that. We've done this kind of, maybe you guys are maybe too young, and I am too, but Rodney King and the riots in LA, and if you look at what happened in different places, it's all you need is a spark. And human nature takes over. What I'm saying is, in the Muslim countries, when things are functioning wise, there is no problems. But when you take out a government, when you bomb the hell out of a country, those minor problems are going to blow up and become big problems. And it's always politics. Why is Russia in Syria? Why is America in Syria? Why don't you let the Syrians deal with themselves? Let it fix itself. Because there's politics, there's oil, there's dominance. And the world's playing chess. And the board right now is the Middle East, unfortunately. Anything else? Come on, those people that haven't asked questions, ask some questions, it's all right. Go ahead.
So you talked about like the 5 pillars of Islam, and I guess what I was hearing is those are like the 5 practices that you guys, or learn from the Quran. But is there like a central belief, I guess, from the Quran?
So the first pillar is that central belief. The central belief in the Quran is that we solely believe in only one creator, one God, Tawheed. The belief in one deity, that is the creator of everything. We don't believe in any kind of polygamy. Polytheism, sorry. For example, I believe polygamy, but anyway, polytheism. So we don't have any worshipping a animal because that is a representation of God, or God coming in a human form, or God splitting himself into 3 and then coming back together like the Transformers, or we don't have any of those kinds of beliefs. We have a very purely monotheistic belief, and that's the main belief of Islam, to believe in that one creator without ascribing any partners or without taking what's due to our creator and giving it to somebody else. See, in Islam we think of it this way. If you go to a statue or an idol and you go worship that idol, but that idol didn't make you, that idol didn't feed you, that idol didn't create the universe. That idol, even if you think of it to be a representation of something, you are taking what's due to the creator of the universe and giving it to somebody else. And that's a cardinal sin. This is one of the biggest dhulm or oppression, is that what we call in Islam shirk, associating partners with Allah. That's a core belief. I mean, think of it like this, right? You as a person, and everybody here, has some kind of a relationship with God. Right? Even if you don't believe in God, when that plane starts shaking, you're like, oh God, oh God, oh God. Right? You're praying to somebody, right? So who is that somebody? Is it a man? Is it a blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy who looks like he's in a rock band? Is it a monkey? Is it a fat guy that you go rub the belly for luck? Who is that God, right? We believe in that core principle that creator, without giving him any human or created forms, the one that everybody has that connection, the one who created all of us, the one who feeds and has that personal connection with all of us, that's the one we worship, without giving any human or our own idea to him. What do we know about that God? Is the book that he sent to us, the Quran, and those that came before it, like the Bible and the Torah, who we believe are all from the same God. Now, Bible, as we know, historically has been switched up, changed a little bit. King James came and did his little thing, and you had many different, like if you look at a Catholic Bible today, and you look at a Protestant Bible, there are different numbers of chapters, right? But the Quran, we only have one Quran. Whether Shia, whether Sunni, whether this, whether that, there's only one Quran. We all believe in one Quran. So we believe this is the last message, and it's been preserved the way it is. And we can show that. We have brothers here that memorize the Quran. We have people in San Diego that have memorized the entire Quran, front to back, chapter to chapter. In Ramadan, you guys are all welcome to come to the mosque. You can hear, in every mosque across here, we're going to have people from their memory reciting the whole Quran, front to back. I would like to challenge, or openly, this video, I'm putting this out there. Show me somebody who's memorized the whole Bible. Word by word, chapter by chapter, verse by verse. The Pope? Nope. Farwell? Nope. Nobody. I can show you little kids that have memorized the whole Quran. That's how we know the original message has been preserved. Alright, more questions? I'm getting good questions here. I'm actually proud of you guys, man. This is pretty good. First I was getting kind of a little disappointed, but you're making a comeback. Yes?
When you go to a mosque, is it usually just preaching, or is it also you guys have rituals?
Sure. So in a mosque, you have the ritual prayers, where you actually in congregation pray, the same way that Jesus prayed by putting his head to the ground. So we have that prayer. And we have on Fridays like a sermon, and other times we have lectures, we have discussions, we have classes, we have all kinds of activities. We have food. So mosques are not just for preaching. There are 5-time ritual prayers, there are weekly services, and then there are other classes. Like we in our mosque, we have a class about the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him. We have classes about how to memorize and recite the Quran. We have classes where we discuss the lives of the prophets. We have classes to discuss Islamic sciences. We have sometimes dinners, like on Thursdays, just for the community. Come together, have some food, sit and talk. And all non-Muslims are welcome. So, all right, that was an easy one. Go ahead.
What is the number one issue that Muslims face in this country?
Trump. No, I'm just kidding.
I know it's a pretty obvious question.
No, it's a good question.
But in detail, I mean, what is the...
To be honest with you, the number one issue that we face, in my opinion, may be different from somebody else's opinions. Right? So this is an opinion, difference between fact and opinion. In my opinion, the number one problem we face is a lack of unity. That we're not together, working together on many things. Everybody's kind of in their own little silos. And that's because the Muslim community in America is very diverse. Some are born, raised here, some are just coming from other countries, some speak one language, some speak other. Geographically, we're pretty spread out. So this is a problem that I see. And the root of a lot of the problems we're facing is definitely xenophobia. You know, when you have a Christian who is believer in Christ go out and commit a horrible act of terrorism, like in Norway, where there was a man who declared a crusade with a cross, wrote a 1,500-page manifesto talking about why he wants to initiate a crusade to stop the Muslims from coming to Europe, and then went shot 69 kids and a bunch of other people and blew up stuff. Nobody called him a Christian terrorist. Nobody came to each one of you who are Christians here and blamed you for it or asked you to apologize for it, right? But we as Muslims get blamed for the act of every single Muslim, whether he was not even a practicing Muslim. He could be just some nut. You know, nobody kills innocent people unless he's crazy. No sane person does that. But nobody calls them. Timothy McVeigh goes and drives a truck and blows up IRS building and kills all these people. But nobody says, what church did he go to? You know. But if a Muslim who's never even been to a mosque goes just completely nuts and just shoots people, suddenly it's like Al-Qaeda and Quran and every Muslim and any Muslim that he may have called in his life is going to be now taken into detention and all that kind of stuff. And nobody thinks that these are individuals. So these kind of xenophobic ideology that we're seeing trying to stop mosques. You know, we need a place to pray. You know, if you don't have mosques, we're going to pray in the middle of the street. You don't really want that, right? The traffic's going to be horrible. So why not have mosques? If you can have churches, you can have synagogues, why can't you have mosques? You know, so these kinds of xenophobic ideas are a big problem we're facing. So Trump, anyway. What else?
Can I ask a second?
Go ahead.
I'm very ignorant when it comes to Sharia law.
Sure.
And my question is, do most Muslims reject Sharia law? Is it part of the Quran? Or?
Great question. First thing, what is Sharia law? I think this is a big problem that we see, and this is not something that's an accident, but there is actually a movement, like in Indiana and Idaho, to stop Sharia law. Who's calling for Sharia law in Idaho? It's hardly any Muslims in Idaho, right? This is all xenophobia, right? Sharia law is an Islamic method of governance. And all we know in the West about Sharia law is cutting hands and cutting heads. But that's not what Sharia law is all about. Sharia law means the law that is based on the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet. And every Muslim in their faith believes in the Quran and what's in the sayings of the Prophet. So we all believe in it. But now, what does Sharia law mean? This is the place where people get misty or muddy or whatever. Sharia law has to do with governance through justice, through making sure that you have prevention instead of cure. For example, in Saudi Arabia, you go to Saudi Arabia, and I've done this, you could leave your wallet somewhere, and you come back and it's still there. You could leave, like I have an uncle who left his briefcase in a taxi that had money, that had his credit cards, everything. The taxi driver drove around looking for him to give it back to him. And it's not because Saudis are any better people than us, but because if the fear is that your hand's going to get chopped off, you're not going to do the crime. So Sharia law is about prevention instead of cure. What do we do in the US? We're like, let them commit the crime. And then what happens? Some little kid does some, misdemeanor somewhere. He gets arrested. He goes to prison. What happens in prison? I used to give lectures in prison, so trust me, I know. You have to hook up with a gang. Either you're going to be with the Sureños or Norteños, or you're going to be with the Aryan Brotherhood or the Black Guerrilla family. Now you went in for some minor crime. Now you're having to stab somebody or becoming somebody's bride, and you don't want to do that. So it really becomes worse and worse. You breed criminals. There is no rehabilitation in prison.
And it's a for-profit system, which is a really big problem.
And that's another problem. Prisons are for-profit. So their idea is to keep you in. Your probation laws, your parole laws are made to bring prisoners back. So what does that do? It develops a system where you put people together in a horrible environment, run by criminals, and what do they do all day? Work out, get stronger, and make schemes and plans and network with criminals. And you think they're going to come out and become better citizens? You got tattoos all over your face. What kind of job interview are you going to go for? So this is one type of system. Islam is a different system. In Islam system, you make the law such that innocent cannot be persecuted. You have to have witnesses. You have to have clear evidence. You have to have a system that governs to make sure the innocent are not punished. And those who do break laws, and again, there is checks and balances. If somebody's underage, they're not able to know right from wrong. They haven't hit puberty. They don't know. Then they're not held accountable. If somebody's insane, they have mental issues. They have mental judgment problems. They're not held accountable. Somebody's sleepwalking. Somebody's an accident. Somebody's stealing out of starvation. They're not held accountable. But if somebody's out stealing big amounts of money, we're not talking about candy, anything that's small. But somebody's out robbing, carjacking, breaking into houses for fun. That person gets a punishment, such as a hand cut, that makes an example that nobody ever does that again. So that is the essence of Sharia law, to have peace and stability in society. And once you look at that, then every Muslim believes in that.
Thank you.
Cool.
That was the call clear.
Yes.
Let's see it then.
The fourth one there a lot.
No, sorry, it's really loud. When I went to Morocco, I just found out that it's frowned upon to stop the adhan. So I had to just turn it down.
I think we're good. Any more questions?
Go ahead, please.
One question on what you guys believe on heaven and hell and how to get into
Sure.
heaven.
Great
That's
question.
the best.
So
Because it's about the afterlife.
now, when we talk about heaven and hell, being raised in America and going through a lot of churches, there is a difference between the Islamic idea of heaven and hell and the Christian idea of heaven and hell. We believe in heaven, no doubt. We call it Jannah. And we believe in hell, we call Nar. But these are places of reward and punishment for those who do righteous deeds or evil in the world. But they're not so much like what we see in the Bible. We don't really see that the devil is not going to be ruling hell. He's not a ruler or anything, So the idea is, when somebody does good, they go to a place, which we call Jannah or heaven, where they will live a blissful life forever. Ever and ever, right? Because humans were meant, even if you think of the way you think, you always think about the future. You don't think, okay, I'm just going to finish tomorrow and then there's going to be nothing. Humans were made to be like that. And that's why Allah made places for reward and punishment. And heaven is a place that in the Quran it tells us, and the Prophet told us, that no eye can imagine, no ear has heard, that can hear, no intelligence or mind can think of. It's a whole different level of existence. There are similes given to things that are in the world, like rivers and houses, but in reality, it's a whole different state of being. Hell is the same thing. We're talking about fire, but we're not talking about the fire that you light in an oven. We're talking about a fire that you couldn't imagine in this world. So this is the idea of heaven and hell in Islam. How do you get there? The first tenet to get into heaven is to have the right belief. You got to recognize your creator. You got to believe in Allah. You got to believe in the one that created you. But that's not enough. It's not free. You got to do good deeds. You got to be a good person. You got to earn the mercy of your Lord so that Allah can forgive us and enter us into heaven. So that's a short answer to a very beautiful question. But if you have more, I'm here for more questions. If you want to continue, you guys are all welcome to come to the mosque. Any mosque. All our mosques are open. We don't have any kind of memberships or secret societies or handshakes or anything like that. Yes?
I just had a comment regarding the last question. So in Islam, it's not like because a person acts a certain way, then like they're going to go to hell or they're going to heaven or they're going to heaven. It's not something that a human being can determine. Instead, that's why we believe in the Day of Judgment, where God will judge. And we say that only God knows what's in the hearts. So regardless of a person, like, I don't know, like being a prostitute, for example, you know, only God can judge her or him. And at the end of the day, like, we as human beings don't know who's going to heaven or hell or who is a believer or a non-believer just because, you know, what they look like or the actions that they do. So I feel like that's a really important point.
And if I may add to what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Because the judge is Allah. With your permission to teach, you know? So the judge is Allah, our judge is the God, you know? You don't want to make a partnership with the Creator to judge. But we are here as Muslims to invite ourselves and all of you to the true way of life. I have to tell you that because we have, you know how you have guidelines in every situation. Right here you have your syllabus. Here's your syllabus. If you're tardy twice, you're gone, you know? So I would like to offer, we have the copy of the meaning of English Quran. We have some limited, please take them with you and keep them with you. And we have also a brief illustrated guide to understanding Islam, which has also some scientific things that we discussed as well. Please don't hesitate to take those and make it easy for us to carry them back to the car.
And please, again, I mean, just to end, make sure you take something, make sure you read, make sure you ask questions. There are brothers here, there are sisters here. You can get their emails, you get their address so that at least we can start building these bridges. We can start clearing up this confusion. We can start knowing what really Islam is. Otherwise, if you look at the way society is going, people are trying to make a clash between civilizations that doesn't exist. So the only way to stop that is actually learn. So I invite everybody, don't leave without taking something with you, taking some contact. If you want to know more about Muslim women, there are Muslim women here. Get their number, ask them why do they cover, what do they believe in. They can tell you better than me. You know, there are Muslim brothers here. If you want to know more about brothers and why we have cool beards, you can get somebody's, no, we're not Duck Dynasty fans, but, you know, you can get them, although I like the show, but you can get emails and addresses and you can get to know. So, thank you very much.